Pokemon Sword and Shield ends up being the biggest disappointment this whole decade. We're soon at the end of 2019, and it completely failed everything. This completely failed everything. So, hello everyone. I want to give you some framing here immediately. Okay, so I am a game developer. I've done all this stuff in my life too. But I've been working with game development for 15 years, and I think I'm gonna come from this video because there's a lot of good videos about this Pokemon fiasco, right? And I think a few of them are coming from that tactical areas. I'll go a little bit that and so on. But also, I'm a role-playing freaking expert master. My thesis was in role-playing games. Seriously, my master thesis is in role-playing games. And I played Pokemon. I still play it. You know, Pokemon Moon here. I still play it. I played it for 300-400 hours. My favorite Pokemon is probably Toxapex. I have 3 shiny of that. And I'm a huge role-playing game fanatic guy. So, for example, here's my Suikoden. Suikoden 2. What's the other game here? Was it like Breath of Fire? No, it's Vagrant Story. Vagrant Story. Oh, this is a good game. These are my 2 favorite PlayStation. Probably my 2 favorite JRPG games ever. Yeah, Suikoden 2, of course, is the most valuable. This game here is worth like, I don't know, 20, 30, $200. Yeah, it's the most valuable game to PlayStation 1. Yeah. So I collect role-playing games. Okay, so I collect JRPG games. And I had a Pokemon game, right, and so on. And there was more here from Fantasy, Breath of Fire. This is my PlayStation 1 collection. Oh, Sega Fontaine. Fire, Fantasy, all epic games. Diablo, okay, and so on. So it's like, you know, I have like 200 Japanese role-playing games, 300, something like that. I don't know. I lost count. And again, I have a paper published. Like, I have a research paper published about role-playing games. So I'm not saying that to be like, I'm so awesome, even though I am, but I'm also saying that because, so I really know my Japanese role-playing games, and also generally role-playing games, and I also have worked, for that matter, with Square Enix. I have worked on game designing and developing and coding, mainly design role-playing games, and I worked on FF7 Remake. I can't say what I did, but I worked for that a few years ago, and I know a lot of people actually are working right now on FF7 Remake, but I can't say what. And I worked for Blizzard and so on as well, right? So I worked a little on Diablo, so. But I can't. Diablo, but you know, so not details. But so I've been there, right? I've been there, and I know the Pokemon games very, very well. And these games, this is an amazing failure of the whole game, right? And I really want to emphasize what I think is the biggest failure of this game, and that is not the cutting of 50% Pokemon. It's not the cutting of removing more than half of the Pokemon. Even though it's a very obvious mistake, or a mistake like an obvious issue, and then I fully understand that they were lying about it, and they were saying, oh, it's new models and so on. But I think immediately for me, that's the biggest issue. For me, from, again, like a role-playing, you know, like a role-playing standpoint, the game is very subpar. But the game is very like, oh man, it's just, there's no game after you beat the game, right? There's no end content. There's no end game content. They removed the GTS thing. I think the GTS thing for me is big. I love the GTS system. I love to go in and the game is new. Oh, I want to have a Pikachu. So, oh, you want this Pokemon? Okay, then I go and capture that Pokemon. Then I trade it. I love adding in, for example, oh, when I face this Pokemon that I know it's an exclusive for my version, I would capture more of them so I can trade later or so on. I love that thing. And that's removed. And again, the battle tower is streamed down. They don't have the super tower. And so on. And all of that. It is really horrible. That's just bad. That's bad. It means it's less of a game than this game here, right? It's less of a game than, of course. I dropped it on the ground. Blooper! In anger, I dropped it. Or whatever. But it's less than that game that I just threw the ground there. But it's less of that game. And it's more expensive, right? It's cost 50% more, right? It's a 50% more expensive game. And I think that the value of 50% is a great value to say there, because if you mention that it's $20 more, roughly, depending on the country, sure, it's $20 more, but that's 50% more, right? $40 or $60. And so you're paying 50% more, and you're roughly getting 50% less. And that is horrible. It's really horrible, because as we all know, now we're going into the Switch thing, right? We're getting into the Switch. This is finally going to be Pokemon's grand entrance to a modern console, not anymore being on a handheld that has less compatibility. And what you expect is just more of everything, right? So I think that is a theme, again, here, would have to be emphasized. Cutting out Pokemon, really horrible. That's freaking horrible. Already there, they're obviously get reviewed, bombed and so on. Already there, it's crap, and it's horrible idea. They can clearly do it, I'll talk about more later. But I think, again, right, you have to think that the gameplay is less. And I don't mean the gameplay because you have less Pokemons, right? I mean the gameplay that where it's like the beauty contest thing, right? Why is it more of this stuff? Why isn't it more of a fishing game? Why is it more, so on, right? Again, I have played, you mentioned the JRPG game. I have very likely played it. I've probably very beaten it on hard difficulties or whatever. And I can give you numerous examples, right, of extra game modes in role-playing games. For example, one of my favorite, Blitzball for 10. Great. I love Blitzball, yeah. I love it. It's like a game in itself, right? Awesome, right? So to answer this, I really like Better Fire Fishing. Pretty good, actually. I liked it more than I liked F-15, actually, fishing, yeah. That was actually also its own game. That was cool. Suikoden, of course, has a cooking game, has the fishing game, the two for them, has a gambling game, has a trading game in Suikoden too. It has like the trading system game, kind of like to trade items and so on. There's like 4 or 5 mini games in that game, and the chef thing is actually like a game itself too, right? So you look at the other role-playing games, like the bigger franchise role-playing games, especially of course Final Fantasy, where it's the biggest, right? But also other games like Breath of Fire, you have your own village. Suikoden, you have your own city, right? Of course, I remember Suikoden, you have your own 108 characters, right? You have your massive building your own empire and so on. 3 different game modes. You have the strategy thing, duel thing, and then the normal battle thing and so on. Etc. Right? These other JRPG main titles, right? And they've had for the last 30 years. They are pretty big, right? They're pretty big. And one game, I think the whole review take, I'll come to that later, but it's a big thing, right? They're like, for example, IGN, of course, they're famous here, gave it 9.3, the highest review so far. And I would review it, I would probably give it like 6, but whatever, go to that later. But IGN, comparing the review to Pokemon with Dragon Quest 11, right, which I have here, of course, and I'm beating the game on full Draconian, right? Dragon Quest 11, yeah, great game. I don't have the Switch version, but I have the PS4 version. Because also that's the first thing. And like that game, it is much better than Pokemon, trust me. That's much better. I played them both, it's much better. And but IGN, for example, gave it a worse score, right, to Switch, and that is ridiculous. I mean, it's clearly a better game in every regard, better graphics, a much bigger game, and so on. Yeah, more bosses, a lot of secret stuff, more units in the game. The storyline of Gears 11 has a lot of twists. I won't spoil it, but I can trust me. It's a very long game, okay? The game is actually really long, actually. The storyline is tremendous long, right? Like, it's actually a surprise. It's like too long. Yeah, it's almost like it's like 50 plus hours of storyline. It just never ends. I want to spoil it, but it doesn't end. It keeps going. But at the same time, that's amazing. That's a AAA game, right? And Pokemon is like, it's supposed to be in that level, right? It really is. If you compare it to being one of the main fastest role-playing games and being on a handheld, you can always excuse it a bit. The Pokemon is more like that and so on. But now we have the Switch thing. It just needs to be more of everything. It needs to be more of everything. I think already there, from like a general agenda, JRPG kind of role-playing genre comparison, it is really weak. And that's the honest truth, right? The Pokemon game, it is weak, very weak, compared to other modern JRPG games. Well, it's not modern, but like from the 90s JRPG games, I have more stuff, right? But it was fine that FF7 had more stuff the Pokemon had back in 97, right? But like today, Pokemon is the biggest franchise, that's the most money, and of course the money in the soft. They don't earn every anime dollar, right, and so on. But they obviously have a lot of money. They can hire people. I'm gonna get into stuff later, but as a general premise, they need to be able to not necessarily beat like Final Fantasy or in graphics. Obviously, not graphics is not the biggest Pokemon, but they need to just have more stuff, right? They need to have more game modes. When I was imagining, oh my god, finally a Pokemon to a console, finally like the main franchise Pokemon, the main series, the again series, not like the spin-off series, to the console Switch. And I think everyone did that, and I think that's also what most reviews are complete crap, because I think everyone expected it to just be a lot more of everything, right? Everyone expected it to be, oh, we're getting to Switch. But then you have to add in more game modes, right? More trading stuff, more tournament stuff, more and more and more and more. To go to Switch, it should be more of everything. And instead, we're getting less of everything. There's no dungeons and so on. Stuff like that, right? It's just weird. There's no end game, yeah, and so on. It's just like you can't turn off the XP chatting. That's not a big thing for me. I think it's stupid because it makes it get easier. But I think it's like there's like a functionality thing. Like why can't I turn it off? Right? See what I mean? It's like that's one. It's like why are you removing functionality? You could in the early game. I like that it's actually in the game's beginning, and so on. And I'm going to come to this soon here, but the whole wild area thing is really, really empty. The whole wild area, it is empty like nothing, right? And of course, people are comparing this game to Breath of the Wild, right? And other, Mario and so on, especially Breath of the Wild. I think everyone is dreaming of this like massive Breath of the Wild Pokemon wave. You walk around in these vast areas and so on. And they're doing, and I think that people saying that that's silly, sad things and so on. I agree with that in like, it's an argument that yes, Pokemon probably can't be as big, it can't be as vast, it can't be as wide and so on, whatever. But it can clearly be closer to it, right? But trust me, these wild areas, and you can see it, or you can find people, streaming and so on, right? Look at the areas; they're very empty. Nothing to find there. For example, I'm not a big fan of 15. I think it failed in a lot of sense. And 15 had the same issue. You find like a factory, and you go into the factory, and there's no items in the factory. You can just walk around it an hour for the factory. It's not a single item. You can, you press on everything. You can't find anything. Right? Pokemon, for sure, it's the same thing here. It's just empty of content. You find an area, you can walk around in it. There's nothing there. You can't find like items in the bushes and so on. It's like nothing. And that's weird. And you find houses and it's empty, and you find factories. It's not again same to it's empty. Cities are empty. It's just very very empty. It's very very bare boned. I think that's probably the I would say the most bad thing. It's very bare boned. So the whole gameplay of Pokemon Sword and Shield is just very very lacking compared to the other games. So again, it's less gameplay than for example Moon and Sun had, and it's less gameplay the previous two had, and that is a massive issue, right? Again, because also it's to the Switch, right? It should be more gameplay, it should be more stuff. You have so much more space here, just throw in more gameplay, and I mean, I would say immediately, they should have exactly the same gameplay, all the game modes and everything, and more stuff in the world as well. It should be all of that, right? And then you throw in a lot of new game modes. That doesn't have to be the best thing ever, but I just want to see more of it. I was the card guy, I want more, right? I want is it supposed to be. And again, because it's also the biggest franchise ever, they almost have so much money, they have so incredible much money, so why can't you do it? So anyway, let's talk about stuff, but yeah. But that's the main thing, right? It completely failed on being an actual Switch game. This is still a 3DS game, right, at the best. But actually it's less than 3DS game, so it's like, yeah, it's like a Game Boy game. It's weird. But whatever. Let's talk about the reviews. So, I have a friend, and I won't say the name here, I won't say the game, whatever, so on. And I don't have this whatever, but he works for IGN, it's editor at IGN, and he has offered me, and I say it right here, and I'm posting back this phrase, hopefully won't see the video, but I won't say it, has offered me, it's like if you pay me, I will give you a good review. So I have that. Unfortunately, I can't prove it because he just told me that, talking, and I didn't record the discussion, so I can't prove it, but I feel you can probably answer trustworthy, right? No, but I mean, come on, clearly people are buying reviews and so on. That happens. I'm not saying that these reviews are bought. I will explain what's happening with this review. I will explain it very, very detailed here. So it's like coming from, because I think there's a lot of reviews about this thing. I think some of these are very good, but I think a few people are understanding the game industry and like how it actually works and the game development standpoint. I'll talk about that less. I mean, nature and the mod stuff and so. Because I know that very well. Even though it's really my field, I still worked with the technical artist one for many years. And my last game, I did a lot of technical scripting, but I saw at least, so I know that stuff, so whatever. But I also know this publishing stuff, and yes, people are buying reviews and selling reviews and so on. It happens, but like in that, for example, he didn't write it to me; he told me to it, right? So I can't prove it, but that's kind of how you do it, right? Because you don't want to leave evidence. And I wasn't ready to record. I was like, oh, tell me again, yeah. So I was like, okay, yeah. And he also told me that they win that pretty commonly and so on. That's how it is. At some time, especially if you're a smaller company. Okay, if you're a small indie company, it's more bigger. But with Pokemon instead, let me explain how it works here. Or I mean, I don't know for a fact this is how it went down, but I can say that I am like 99% sure this is how it went down. So trust me that this is extremely likely why IGN and GameSpot is probably because too much Water Girl wrote it, so she can't. It's like another thing. But why are these these outlets giving it such a great review, even though the game is subpar for being a role-playing game, and they're also not just neglecting talking about all the issues, right? It's a pretty simple reason why. If you look at how many reviews actually had the copies beforehand, right, it's only 19, I think, or 18, something like that, 19, I think, that had a review yesterday. So obviously Nintendo doesn't really give it out. Nintendo's are known for that. They have very, very few, giving out a few copies and so on. And it's pretty simple. It's also very Japanese. I would order for. If you give them a bad review, you won't get a copy next time. Basically, right? So even if it's not like, if I pay you now, I pay you $1,000 now, and you give me a 9.3. It's not really like that. I mean, I'm not, again, I don't know this for a fact, but from my experience, and I think it's pretty obvious with Nintendo, and so on in this situation here, I think it's very clear that it's like they know that it's like an unspoken rule that if you give it too bad of a score, like under an 8 probably, the Nintendo would be like, we probably shouldn't give them a copy, right? They don't deserve it anymore. And that means that, yes, you can obviously write whatever you want about this game, but then the next Zelda game or whatever, Nintendo won't send you the copy. And I'm not joking, this happened many times, a lot of people have this, but yeah. They won't send you the copy, meaning that you can't write your Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 review right ahead of time. So when that game is going to be released, I don't know when, but let's say it's tomorrow, so yeah. You can't write the review, you have to wait to get the game as a normal person, right? You buy the game, you play it, you write the review as fast as you can, and it's like one day later, yeah. But that will obviously mean that you will lose so much click, right? You'll lose so much views on your YouTube channel, your monetization, your clicks on your webpage and so on, right? So even if they aren't actually paying them, because I don't think they are. Honestly, I don't think they are at all. They're not bought in the sense that it's like, well, if you have to give a good review. It's more like if you give a bad review, we won't let you review your games anymore. And we're talking about a big company, Nintendo, right? They have a lot of big franchises. Obviously, they have the Mario, Zelda, and so on, right? And they have to be afraid of that. And that's very common, especially Japanese companies. Like I know this classic, like Square Enix does it a lot in Japan, where it's like if you write them a bad review of Final Fantasy, or if you give like one of their lesser games a bad review, some kind of spin-off or something, a Sega game or something, a bad review, right? Like where is it? Sega Fountain 2, what am I saying? Yeah, the Sega Romance 3 is coming out. Here's Sega Fountain 2, right? A classic Square Enix game, one of my favorite games. But yeah, for example, if you give that game a bad review, the newest Sega game, they will be like, you won't get to review F16. Like that's kind of how they work, Square Enix, to a large extent. And I worked their contracts, so I know the insights out there to some degree. I'm not saying it's always like this, but it definitely is kind of like that. And then and believe me though, it's not like they are like this is the rules. It's kind of like it's this kind of how it works. It's kind of like you probably won't get that review. Yeah, it's kind of like that. They kind of hint to it, but it happens though. There's this famous case where they called down the interview or the reviewer and told them you have to give us a better review, whereas your company will never get our games again. It's a famous case of that. The Japanese reviewer 10 years ago, way back. But I can probably find it. I have his written how he wrote about it. He wrote an article about it afterwards. So it's like a famous case, whatever. And that's kind of this, right? So then you're like, shit, I have to give Sega, which I love the Sega game, but you have to give it a good review, whereas you can't review FF16 at a time, and that's going to be a huge game and a lot of money lost, right? So you can point it. So that's how it actually works. And even if IGN hasn't been told by Nintendo that you're better against a good, or else you get to Zelda, this is very much like that, right? Just look at how few people actually got the copy beforehand, right? Very, very few people, right? Very few people. And that's because they have basically already decided that only a few of them that we trust will get them. And these people, these companies, the biggest one like IGN, GameSpot and so on, they know that if they mess Nintendo, they're going to cut them off, right? So that's how the money works. It doesn't work in the sense that they're giving them, here's a bag of money, give me a 10 of 10. It's more like, whereas you remove your revenue, right, by blocking you from getting it at pre, and that's very, very common for many companies actually. It's the most common strategy, especially from Japanese companies. So I might get some heat for this thing. Maybe someone won't hire me for saying this thing, but I think it's just very well known. This is actually very well known. Yeah, this is like a very, very, very well known fact. This has been for at least 20 years, especially in Japan again. Very common for Japanese companies. Because Japan, they don't have fair use zone, right? So they could be like, you can't write about our games, or they're doing that kind of stuff. They're blocking they're blocking their income more than giving them money, right? It's very, usual, very. I'm people that, yeah, but you know what I mean. So trust me on this thing. You can find huge amount of articles and so on for similar games, and again, from other game companies done the thing for years. And I don't know if for a fact that Nintendo, did this thing, but it seems very, very reasonable. It's just very reasonable. So that's the big with the viewers, right? Wow. Oh, sorry. That's the thing for you. Sorry, that's the thing for the viewers. That's how important it was. And that being said, though, there is this other issue, though, which I will say with the viewers in general, right? They're very, very defensive, right? They're very fanatically defending it. And again, I'm a huge Pokemon fan, but maybe I'm just a cynic person, but I just don't see it, right? It's just like there is also a lot of people just defending it, even their viewers, right? They're very biased, and they're very. I think their views and why they get so much hate in general is because people clearly know that they're bought, and I mean bought in that they probably they're afraid of getting bad reviews, but they also, I think it's very noticeable because most of the reviews giving them a very high score, they're not even mentioning the bad stuff, and there's a lot of bad, as I mentioned earlier. No endgame, no dungeon, no GTS, yeah. There's a lot of stuff lacking. And most of the reviews are like, oh, everything is perfect. And he's like, great score, yeah. And they never really mention it. I think especially, I think it was IGN review, where they're like, oh, yeah, this Pokemon is really funny because you have different types that you can do these things on. And then, yeah, that's Pokemon. Like, that's something new for the game, right? And so they did nothing new for a Switch game, right? You're just talking about the general of being Pokemon, right? So it's very clearly that they're very biased and they're hiding the truth, right? But anyway, that's the review stuff. And I think it's pretty poor, right? I see why people hating the reviews, and they should. I think it makes sense. They're clearly bought and also clearly biased. Like I meant to say too. And also, yeah, one last thing too. I think especially GameSpot's review, that is too much water. So that's the classic meme of the girl saying, "It's too much water in Pokemon. I give it a really bad score." She's been fighting, on Twitter people for a while now. It's like, oh, I don't want full decks anyway, and so on, right? And how they get it controversial. So I think in her case, and this is my opinion though, but in her case I think it's very clear that she's like, I will give it a good review because I will piss you off, you haters. Yeah. So it's silly. I think it's so clear in her review. The worst thing ever is that the starts are ugly. That's her thing now. And she was the one giving it a huge minus because too much water, right? And I'm saying, yeah, the game has a lot of water, but that is not a big issue compared to no GTS, no this, right? So if you can complain and give it like a -2 for too much water, you should give it like a -5, right, for lacking all this stuff. That's why you can't take that review seriously. And I just made a GameSpot video last week at Konosuba, right, where they called Aqua Asundra, and I was like, GameSpot, we have no effing idea about anime. So, I mean, I didn't have much confidence in GameSpot anyway, since before Konosuba, but that Konosuba review just proved, without a doubt, that you can't trust their site. And I say that with absolute, I just throw it out there. I would trust serious reviews. I think everyone already knows that, but again, the Konosuba review is even worse than the Pokemon review. The Pokemon review is like, I would tell you it's like best game ever, because I know you hate it, you're supposed to be objective in review a game, right? It's supposed to be just biased and trying to, yeah. But the Konosuba one is much worse, though. It's much worse. Check out my video. But anyway, that's the review thing. Go to the technical of the cutting thing then. They clearly lied about it. And the worst thing, I think, that even if they didn't lie about it, you just say that they didn't lie. Let's argue and say, okay, it's true. They did remodel everything. They did do this stuff. They animated the stuff. They did this. They rigged all the bodies and so on. Technical animated over time and so on. It is really ugly. The game is really ugly. It's effing ugly. Let's be honest here. The game is ugly. And I agree that a lot of the fans, people saying that it's Pokemon. Do you care about it? No, I don't. Actually, I don't. If it looks like a Game Boy, blue and red, in that level of graphics, but it had like 20 more game stuff, more tournaments, more this and this, I would prefer that. I'd be like, I want that game better with much more gameplay. I'd rather want that than a beautiful game. I'd rather want that by far. So I'm not even saying that. Yeah, it should be like the best game ever, graphic wise. So it should. I'm not saying that. I have always been a guy behind gameplay over graphics. That's my thing. Like my latest game that I made, it's crap ugly. No, but it's pretty ugly. But it's a really good gameplay. However, though, the game has other. That game is twice as ugly and it's hard to understand what's happening because design is pretty bad, character design. There's not a video, but that's another issue, right? It's an issue of clearance and user-friendliness versus graphical fidelity. So, but if you ignore that, then graphical fidelity in that game isn't very good, but it's an amazing gameplay. Trust me, that game has amazing gameplay. It's my game, but it's amazing gameplay. So I think it's a great game in the sense that it's really fun to play. Right? It's challenging, it's fun, it's rewarding. When you play the creative, you win and so on. Yeah, it's a very balanced affair game. But so I am that guy. I really don't care about graphics. I don't. Like I never had that. But it's pretty clear, right? If your argument is we cut away half all the Pokemons, and of course we know it's a lie too, but even if it wasn't a lie, for argument's sake again, right? Why is it so ugly then for? Yeah, why is it so ugly for it? So I have worked, as I mentioned, with video games, and I've done games, I've done browser games, I've done Flash games, I've done AAA titles, right? I don't like, I worked on Call of Duty, right? I worked on Skylanders. Probably, I think the biggest game I ever worked on was probably Call of Duty. I think it sold like 25 millions. Black Ops 2, I worked on 3 COD games, but I think Black Ops 2 is still the game I worked on sold the most. I worked on Disney and so on. So I've seen a lot of big game companies, right, with 700 employees, and I was working on small game companies with like 15, 20 employees, and also one with like 6 employees. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of back and forth. Right, I've seen from team to 6, 15, 60, 50, 300, 500, and so on. And back my latest game, then I worked quite close to the technical animators and the graphical. We had a lot of artists in that game company, and let me tell you, the models that we see, right, are pretty crap. Let's be fair. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And like rigging a character like this bunny or something, it takes like a day, sure. Rigging a Pokemon and have different moves. So, but obviously, one thing you would do, and I don't mind it at all, right, is that you would have, well, when this Pokemon does this attack or these 10 different moves, they all have the same animation. That's fine, right? It's like a breath attack, right? And it's the same animation for an ice breath and a fire breath. I know, but it's for easy sake, right? Yeah. And if your Pokemon is like a fire punch or a lightning punch, right? Or it's the same animation, right? But different effects, right? Yeah. That's fine. No one expects you to have like 10 different punches. You can have like the same punch, and you can have maybe 2. If you have a fighting Pokemon, you have a few different ones, but like 3 or 4 different ones, right? You don't need more than that. But when you look at the game, and people have compared it to Pokemon Stadium and so on, yeah, it looks better, right? Pokemon Stadium has better animation. It obviously is like the fidelity and the polygons and everything, that is obviously lower, but the actual rigging, the technical rigging of the body of the Pokemon, it is much better in Pokemon Stadium, for sort of at least. It's much more movable, it's much more flow and so on for some moves. It looks much more alive. Not doing that not doing that super cheap stuff. And I can tell you then from experience that you could rig one of those models maximum one day, probably less than one day. If you're like a senior technical animator, you can probably do it in less than a day. I could easily call someone that I know, right? I know a lot of people take maybe I know probably 50 people that work for this. I could probably call someone today and be like, I can pay you for this and do rig this Pokemon and make it move much more. And they can probably do like, I mean absolutely at least 1 per day, probably more, probably like 3, maybe 2 or so per day. So, and my point with that is that this is, and like I'm not or dedicated. I'm saying from a workout, actual workflow standpoint here. I am sure that a senior technical animator can animate a Pokemon body to have all the moves, because given the case that we have like a few base animation, right? And that animation is used for like 10 movies, right? Of course, right? Not like one animation per move. Then take a long time, right? But as I mentioned earlier, we are assuming that it's fine that if the Pokemon does this thing, it's a breath thing, right? If there's a punch, it's the same thing, right? We assume there is enough with like having like this and maybe this and maybe that, and that's fine for like a Pokemon fighting Pokemon and so on, or maybe a little few more, but like something like that. But let's say it take a day for Pokemon then, but I think it takes less than that. But I think seriously, they can do it in one day. And I know people that I'm 100% sure. Not just like this is my assumption. No, I 100% know at least 2 people that I know that could easily do one of these, one per day. Easily, they could probably do 3, but they could easily do 1 per day. And then you could do like 6, 7 moves. And that's 100% sure. That's my professional expertise in this thing. So trust me, that's 100% sure. So of course then, that gives you a math that 1 day Pokemon, right? 1 day to rig a Pokemon technical a model, which means that you need like 900 days to do it for one person, right? And that's the issue, right? Because we know that Pokemon has a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and obviously it also seems to be that the game freaks, and I don't know anyone there. Maybe I do. Maybe I know someone that I haven't even checked out, but I might know someone on Game Freak actually, like some kind of fluently. I know a lot of people in Japan are the developer and so on, so maybe I know someone that works in that. I don't know. I haven't checked it out, but not that I know very deep to. But maybe I met someone probably one day. But they're not a big company, right? Sizable. They're not small either, though. People are giving them like, the defense that they're so small. That's not small. They're 81, I think. I read latest, and that's not small. Small for me is like 10, 15 in the studio. Or very small, it's like 5. But I think small studio, something like 10 to 30 probably. I think medium is like 50 to 100. I think they're kind of like a medium-sized studio, right? They're not like a small studio. They're obviously not like 500, 300 member, massive studio. But they're not like tiny either. I think that's ridiculous. 80 people is not tiny. 80 people means that you have at least 10 animators, right? You have very, very likely. I don't know exactly how the structure is, but I assume that 80 people, that means you have like 20 coder, 20 animators, maybe like 5 designers, 1 lead designer, 4 designers, and so on, a few producers. I would guess around 20 they work for the graphic stuff, roughly, for 80 people. That's pretty common. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Well, but in their case, they have like 1 person, right? Yeah, and that's what you wanted, right? In their case, even with used to 80 people, you should have roughly 20 people. So even in their case, it's be like 20 people. It's like at least like 1 year of work. I mean, you can animate again, then model a rig and so on. And if you have like say 5 animators, technical animators, they could rig 5 Pokemon a day then. So there's 5, 800 divided by 5, right? So that's how many days it would take at their level. But then I'm talking about like really good rigs, right? Really good rigs. And we see the game, it is horrible rigged, right? It's horrible rigged, horrible. The technical side of it, it's really bad. It's very, very lacking. And I say that from a technical standpoint, not from my opinion that I want a better Pokemon game, but from my technical standpoint, it's clearly technically horrible. And it feels to me, again, from a professional standpoint, that it's like, do you have like 1 animator? Yeah, because like that is like not animated. So what did you do for this year or 2 years there? What did you people do? Don't you have like at least like 10 people working with this, or at that field of the game? You have like 1 person doing it, yeah. So, and that's everything, and all of this is argued from the technical standpoint and from the workload standpoint that you actually did it from scratch. And okay, it's fine. I was talking about rigging now, but so it's like 1 day for the model too, maybe 1-2 days for the model. So sure, okay, yeah, I'm maybe a little overconfident here on the. You're talking about technical riggers or animators, but you also need like the modelers. But I mean, but we all know the models are stolen rights from the old game, so yeah. But sure, you also need like 10 other people doing the modeling, I suppose. So another like so double that workload. Okay, fine, double that workload. But it still is like you should have you're 80 people, right? I expect something like this from like 10 people, right? Honestly, in 2 years, yeah. It's not that impressive at all. It's not impressive from a development standpoint, right? It is not for 80 people. It's not. And of course, again, we all know that they have infinite money, right? But they have so much money, so we know that they can hire 50 more animators, right? And there's been a lot of like rumor leaks from people working there. It's like, oh, they failed engineering, and the importer failed and so on. And I think that's true. It's probably true because there's no reason, in my opinion, my professional opinion, there's no reason why 80 people couldn't actually just do it for 800 Pokemon, 900 Pokemon. It's not that much. It sounds like a lot, but it actually isn't, because you don't have to animate, like every move. You animate like 4 or 5 animations per Pokemon. You don't have to be, but now it's like 0. Now it's like, now it's like the laziest thing ever. So it's, and I think that honestly, of course, we all wanted to be like 25 animation Pokemon, right? We all wanted to be amazing. And honestly, I think as to have so much money for it, I think that's the level I would honestly feel it should be at if you can talk about AAA production value, comparing it to other games from roughly the same popularity wise. The 8 Pokemon at 25 animation per fight and so on, at least, right? That'd be incredibly diverse and have very vivid animation and so on. But I'm talking from this bare bone perspective. Just adding like 4 or 5 animations per Pokemon, as I mentioned, then should be enough for less people to do in this time frame, and that would have made a huge difference. It would make it look 10 times better than it does right now. Because right now it's incredibly cheaply looking, it's incredible bad bone. So that's a big issue, right? And so even then, again, we are assuming now that they're saying the truth, that they didn't actually, just take the old model. They actually did the work, but then they did a really bad work. They really did, and that's for my, again, I don't like this argument saying that oh, I have done this, I have a degree in this, I know the truth, right? I don't like that. I hate that kind of argument. But to make a point here, right, from my many years of experience working at a lot of different game companies and so on, this is very low effort, right? That's how it looks like. And I actually think it's not low effort. I think what I would assume from my experience and so on, it's not about low effort. It probably is more about mismanagement and things not working. It is probably more like, oh shit, it doesn't work. So we have to cut away all this stuff over here because the game probably didn't work very well close to the release. At E3 this year, the game was probably half-ass working. So they were like, shit, we have to like just cut away this thing, remove all the end game stuff, remove this stuff and so on. I don't for a second believe they plan to be like not all Pokemons. Why would they plan for that? Yeah, I think it's much more a result of probably just a lot of bad technical decisions and bad management, mismanagement, but also then bad engineering and so on, right, in general, but also probably bad animation, bad everything, bad everything, bad animator, bad graphic, bad artist, bad production, bad coders, bad. It feels like everything is bad because everything looks pretty bad. I'm very harsh here, but I mean everything in the game looks just kind of meh, to be honest, right? Everything. I haven't played it. I haven't played I have the game, but I haven't played the full game yet. Like I haven't beaten the game, from this time frame that I'm doing the video. But from seen enough, and obviously everyone has streamed the game and so on. It's like everything's pretty bad, and no end game content and so on. It's just kind of silly. It's sad in that way, right? Because they have so much money too. They could hire so much people to do it more. That being said, though, I feel very harsh now, but this is just from my professional experience. I think the biggest problem is very likely mismanagement. Usually, what happens in this kind of industry, in this kind of situations, because again, I think there are enough people to do it a lot better than this. So it has to be a lot of issues. So in that sense, though, if they actually hire more people, maybe they wouldn't have that much because it probably would be an even more messy production. So I have to say that, though. I mean, obviously should hire more people and so on, but also should probably change some stuff, right? So I'm hoping that this backlash actually makes Nintendo, especially Nintendo higher ups, be like, no, you have to fix your shit now. We're gonna fire this and this guy, whatever. I don't know, but the guy have to do something, right? Hopefully, but the game probably said millions anyway, right? Even if people like me are telling you to. But I will say this thing. That is the end of the video. But I will say this thing. I don't think you should buy the game for the full price. Absolutely not. Especially not for. I mean, I personally was like, man, if I didn't get the game, I wouldn't do it, right? Yeah, I wouldn't buy it for the full price, which I haven't. But yeah, I wouldn't buy it for the full price. What I would do is that if it's like cheaper on Black Friday, because it's 2 weeks from now, I would probably buy it, yeah, and so on. But another issue I also have with it, because Pokemon and Nintendo is the same company, right? I also feel Nintendo doesn't deserve a full Switch value. For example, I was thinking of buying the Switch Lite. I was thinking of buying the Switch, the new one with more battery and so on for Pokemon. I was like, man, I should buy that. That'd be pretty cool. Pokemon on Friday. But I was flat out refusing now. I will not pay Nintendo I will not give them the full money price for the Switch and so on. If I was just buying the game, I don't want to, again, it doesn't deserve the full value either. It doesn't. I think the game is probably like a $30 game. It's like less, value than a 3DS game. So it's like a $30, $20 game. That's probably how I also feel about it. But it's like fine for like 40 or so, I suppose. But it's not. But it's not worth that. It's not worth the full Switch dollar value. Definitely not. You should pay it. You should buy it on a. Hopefully on Black Friday you can buy it cheaper. But I think that it also extends to Nintendo though. So all like this, from a principle standpoint, I was honestly gonna go and buy again the new Switch for full price tomorrow. And I know I said a lot like I am freaking awesome because I work for this game and so on. But bear with me here. Let me humble my point there. The value for a Switch for me, the cost value, is pretty cheap. I'm not saying it's cheap like in, it's expensive because I want price, but compared to my salary, and again, I know it's like it's like a weird brag now, but just be with me, right? Compared to my salary, I can make that money in like 2 days, right? Something like that. It's not a lot of money. So me waiting for like buying the new Switch Lite or buying the new bigger Switch a little bit more time on Black Friday, for example, because that thing I probably will buy it then if it's much cheaper. I probably will, honestly, the new Switch. The money I save on that, I earn like on 1 day when I work, because I have a really high salary. So, and I'm not saying that to be like, yeah, I'm freaking rich, so I'm awesome. I'm saying that more in that, economically speaking, me waiting for a Black Friday deal, and I think you should do it too for that matter, right? I think that I would argue for it generally, because I know a lot of people, they don't own the Switch and so on, right? They don't own the Lite, and a lot of people are saying that they want to buy the Switch for Pokemon, right, and play it. And it gets like a really high investment when the game is clearly not worthy because they haven't spent the time, right? And I think that really reflects badly on Nintendo, right? Because yes, Nintendo only owes this much share, but come on, it's like clearly a Nintendo franchise. It's a Luigi game, yeah. But if you look at Luigi Mansion 3, right, that's a lot better in Pokemon when it comes to at least polish-wise and they spent the time and so. It looks a lot better, right? And Mario Odyssey, Zelda and so on, right? Fire Emblem, stuff like that. I haven't played Fire Emblem yet, but I think I'm gonna buy it. I'm probably gonna buy them for Friday, yeah. But Zelda and Mario and so on, and Fire Emblem, they are all much more polished than Pokemon, right? And they all are making less money than Pokemon. And Pokemon, again, is a Nintendo game, right? Very, very much so. So I feel like they don't deserve the full Switch price. They just released the two new Switch, right? The biggest Switch with time, which is like the Pro, more time at least, battery time, and the Lite one. And they don't deserve your full price. That's my opinion. As a company, here's one of their absolute flagship games. Their biggest game, actually, when it comes to revenue, right? And they are failing completely. It's just a lazy, cheap, cut the thing. And I read this great review comparing it to, again, DQ11, Dragon's 11, comparing the Pokemon, because they're like, both of these games are very much traditional, right? Dragon's 11 is very, very traditional, as it's always been in Dragon Quest. It's very like Akira Toriyama style. It's the exact same storyline, basically. It's longer, but it's very, very traditionalized. Yeah, it is. That's very true. And I like the Dragon Quest. It stays on that classic JRPG system, right? They never change stuff. It's just the same stuff. Whereas like Final Fantasy always changes every gameplay, right? It says the best episode. But the thing is that Dragon Quest 11, as this review wrote as well, I think it was a great review, is that it's just better in everything, right? And I don't think this is the best game I ever played. I don't think this is the best game I ever played in my life. But when it comes to, actually I like 8 more for that matter, but when it comes to Dragon Quest, they're always doing the exact same thing. but it's just better. They have more stuff. It's better. They have this monster thing. It's better. They're refining it. They're refining it. You know exactly what you're gonna get, and you're getting it better, right? You're getting it like last time, but more of everything. It's a longer game, more storyline, more bosses, and so on. More or less. It's just more of everything. They haven't removed anything really. They're just adding more stuff to everything. They didn't remove the monster taming thing though from 8, which I really loved the Pokemon in 8. For that matter, the Dragon Quest monster games are really good. Like Yokoso, I love those games. They are better than Pokemon. Straight up, they're great games. I actually played the first Dragon Quest monster game probably more than Pokemon Red and Blue. Actually, I played that game more than the game could calculate. So it went to like 9.9 hours. Then they couldn't actually add more hours. That game was fantastic for that matter. A little ugly though, but it was really good. So whatever, those games are great. So they're always doing stuff and they're adding more to it. It's extremely traditionalized, but they're adding more. And I think that's kind of the core issue of Pokemon, right? Where it's like it's just less of everything, and they're not refining the system they already have. And they're removing Mega Evolution and C moves and so on. And they're like, what happened to this shit? You keep it here. What happened to? They should refine it better, right? It should be like, here's a tournament, super tournament, only for super battles. Here's a tournament for double battles and so on, right? And they should refine that. It should be like a mode of that, where it's like super duper double battle, which you have to do with a partner online, and then it's a tournament, and you can win this stuff. And these new 20 moves are only good in double partners, but then they're really good and so on. They should refine that. It should be more of everything for a Switch game. I think the biggest lack and the biggest feel you have when you play Pokemon Sword and Shield. And the thing is that, do I like the game? Yeah, the game is pretty okay. It's pretty okay. It's just like worse. It's just okay, right? Yeah, you don't hate it when you play it. You're still enjoying it. But I think the biggest issue is that, as the emotional feeling is that it's just like, this should have been so much more of everything. I think especially back to this wide area thing, when you're moving around in the world, it is a really crappy open world game. It is really, that's probably the worst thing. Graphical wise, it's really ugly, and it's obviously a really empty open world thing. As I mentioned earlier again, right, with very reminiscent of FF15 for me, and I did not like FF15. Man, I have played every FF game, I have every game, I love Final Fantasy, I collect Final Fantasy, I know everything about Final Fantasy series, and 15 is like my worst. I did not like it. And one of the reasons I didn't like it, right, was that, as I mentioned earlier, you can enter a factory, no item, you can just walk around forever, nothing to find and so on. And actually 15, yeah, and there's a lot of hunts, there's a lot of extra bosses, but there's no extra bosses you can just find by random. Compared to FF12, which is a much better, FF12 is a weird game. FF12 is a masterpiece from of course Yasuo Matsuno, and in that game you can walk around, find this dungeon, go into the dungeon by random, go into this sewer. There's a boss. There's a hidden boss there. Beat the boss, get a new summoning, or die on the boss usually, and we'll go back later on, you higher level. Like that game was great on that. F15 is like, you walk around, there's nothing there. There's nothing to find. I mean, you have the 8 weapons. That's true. You have the 8 weapons. You have that thing, but nothing else. There's something like you could never just walk around on the night in that game and use, here's a new demon boss that's here in the desert. I can beat it and get. Yeah, doesn't exist. Nothing at all. Yes, they do spawn random stuff, but you never accidentally find like this super boss something. It doesn't exist in that game. It's empty of actual content in that sense. There's no secrets more or less, except just the Northern Temple and the weapons, but they're very like located in they're very specific locations, right? You can't go around and you just find this boss out in the desert at random spawns have a great item drop, something. It doesn't exist. And there also is no crafting really so on as well, so it's also really to get right, so it's really boring. But Pokemon is the exact same issue. You go into an area and it's completely empty of Pokemons, and you go into an area and there's no items there's no like randomization. They're very, very tiny. The game is very tiny, right? And it's very short main story, which I think the main story I don't care honestly that much, but it's just very short. Everything is less of everything, right? Black and White 2 especially, but Black and White is a better main story. I actually kind of liked Lily and so on. I liked Evil Mom, and it was very like Kill la Kill for me. I love Kill la Kill, Pseudo Trigger, Obviously, I love Zero Trigger, and when I played Sun and Moon, it is very, in my opinion, very kill the anime storyline. I would say, evil. But I don't know. It's very evil mom, and I know all people did the same comparison. So I am alone to say that she's very evil mom. But whatever. But I liked that. I liked it. It wasn't the best storyline, but it was pretty good. And the newest game, I haven't finished it yet, to be honest, right? Because this is just the first day here. But it's just pretty shallow. It's just kind of there. And again, now we are on the Switch, so the storyline should be grander. It should be longer. It should be a classic JRPG. When I was a kid, you would say not to made in Japan meant less 40 hours of gameplay, right? When I was a kid, you would get Final Fantasy 7. I was kind of growing up on the SNES and NES, right? I'm old, but yeah, back then, especially during the PlayStation era, all of these games, like all of the games I have here, I have a lot more. I have so much JRPGs over here. This is my favorites. That's why I have them in the paperback, because I don't want to get too dirty, right? But like all of these games here is like, Breath of Fire, right? I have I know, his but still, Chrono Cross, and I know people are like, oh, Chrono is much better, but still, right? All of these games, Legend of Mana, this is pretty expensive though. Oh yeah, this is pretty expensive too, yeah, Legend of Mana, right? Ooh, reflection there, but yeah, all of these games have like at least 40 hours of gameplay just to beat the storyline. Bare minimum, yeah. So why can't Pokemon have that? And again, DQ11 has like 100 hours freaking main. It's like, it never ends. Like too much main story. Exona Gears here. No, maybe the flag. Oh, here it is, yeah. Exona Gears. Man, this game. Role-playing game. This has like 50, 100 hours. This game is tremendously long. One of the one I had to buy in there. It hits. As they imported to. Remember that I'm from Sweden, right? So this game is not released in Europe. I had to import it. That's why I also have this in green too, because it's also imported in. You have to import it from the US to play it in Europe. So yeah, that's why I have the much lesser value version, unfortunately. But yeah, one day maybe I will buy them in, I guess, the original limited edition, supposedly. But anyway, all of these games, right? And I have so much more role-playing games. But if I can example, this is my favorite game. They're all at least 50 hours. Sona Gears, again, this is like freaking 100 hours for the main storyline. It's forever. And it's so philosophy. And I know people say, but Pokemon is never been that. And it's true, Pokemon is never that. But Pokemon Gold and Silver, when you beat Pokemon Gold and Silver, what happens? Spoilers. You unlock Red and Blue, right? You have to go back to Red and Blue, and you go around, you have to beat all the gyms and so on. That was like, and I felt that was like this, it was like an extension of the old game, and it was kind of like the same storyline. You can keep playing the gyms and new Elite Four and so on. But it was like, man, this is awesome. And then I ran into the last boss fight in the cave, and it's that felt like a long journey, right? And that also gold and silver. So for me, that again, I have to admit, I haven't finished it yet, because I'm doing this the first day of the game is out, the first time I play the game. So I admit the game is that I haven't finished it, the storyline. But everyone keeps saying it's like 15, 20 hours shorter, and I don't think they would lie about that, yeah. So, and it feels pretty short and so on, right? And I'm not a big fan of the new team at all. Okay, I did like the Punk Girls last time, I liked the last team. I liked the last team a lot more, actually. But whatever, I don't think that's a big concern. But it is clearly just so lacking for a game, right? I don't say it all the time, but it's lacking as a role-playing game, right? It should be like these games here, where it's like, it's a AAA game, it should take you 40, 50 hours to beat the single-player campaign. Because it's a Switch game, it should be longer gameplay, it should be a longer storyline than the 3DS thing, but it's shorter. That just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. So it's really sad, right? Okay, what more can we cover? I haven't even talked about, there's so much lacking. The moves, I mentioned that, right? There are less moves, less Pokemons, less moves, less, just less of everything. It's no dungeons, I don't like that at all. I did like that they removed the I did like that, but it's kind of weird that it's not like you need a flashlight and so on. So there's just so many. This is more nitpick though, but when we're doing the video, why not, right? So this is more nitpick, but for example, in the last game, in Moon and Sun, you were riding on your towers, right? You were riding on your Charizard, you were riding on your Pokemons when you were doing stuff in the world, which you kind of got instead of the HM, and that was just cool, right? But in this game, it's like, oh, you have the bike, Then you have the water bike. Yeah, it's just lazy, right? The game is effing lazy in every regard. It's like what happened to having your Pokemon running around on. That was way cooler. And obviously, why do you do that? Well, it's less workload, right? Because if you have the bike on land, and then you have the bike on the water, too much water, you have the bike on too much water areas, it's the same animation, it's the same thing, right? It's less workload, right? But it's silly less workload, right? It's like, yeah. And the whole game is just riddled with less workload, less workload, less workload. How can we make this game finish in like one day? So to me, it really feels like the game didn't work before E3 and they made the game in a few months. That's how it just looks, right? It looks ridiculous because the bike there is a perfect example of, instead of having 2D Pokemons that they had in the previous game, they look way cooler, right? You have your towers and you have your shore, and you change its Pokemon, right? Then going from water to land, and that was cool, right? Instead of having that, it's like the same thing, just to make less work, right? Just to make you can do it faster, and it looks lamer. It looks, just less care, right? Less polish, and that's again an evidence for that. And there's so much stuff like that. I think the bike is a perfect example of is how to cut corners and how to make it. But again, also how to make it a lesser game than the previous game or the previous installment. And then there's all this stuff. It's just so much stuff. Oh my god, there's so much stuff. If you want to go on the nitpick level, it's just so much stuff. The XP share, why can you turn it off, right? I mentioned earlier too, but like, I mean, I think the XP share is good to have. The functionality is great. And I think, honestly, that is on like a default value. And I read this, it's a great, it's about default value things. I think default value should be on, in my opinion. As like a designer opinion, I think it should be on, definitely. But to not be able to turn it off is weird. You can do it in the last game. Why force the user to have it on, right? I don't like that, right? And one thing that I really hate is the whole you can't capture Pokemon on too high level. That's really stupid. So you have this open world area, which already is pretty crap. Honestly, right? You be honest here. The open area is generally pretty bad. Right? You walk around here, it's empty. And one thing that open area has done good in other games, not in open areas, but generally role-playing games, right, that you walk around and so on, is that sometimes you can find this bigger, stronger monster, and it usually will kill you, and then it will be like, I will return and defeat you, right, yeah, and so on. And like in Phantasy Star, the random white dragon would appear in the ice planet and would kill you all the time, and it was really annoying actually, because it was incredibly strong, and it was random encounter, and it would just slaughter you, and it's just like stronger and less boss actually. It's stupid. But still, though, that made that area feel a lot more like, wow, intimidating. Actually, kind of afraid when you walk around the ice planet. You really are, actually, because it's a horrible boss. It's horrible random dragon that appears. But still, though, that's pretty common for role-playing games, right? You have that, you walk around and meet and so on. And the thing is that when you then meet these two high-level Pokemon in this grand world, then, arguably, you should probably lose. That's the main fun of it, right? That the world is more alive and it feels scary and so on. So you should lose, that's good. And you do it sometimes because they are higher level, you can beat sometimes, that's good. But also, if you manage to beat them, you should be able to capture them, right? It's speaking of it. But if you manage to beat this white dragon that suddenly appeared and it's 50 levels too high for you, and you're like, holy shit, I hate these white dragons, but maybe I can beat it, and you manage to defeat it, you should get a lot of XP, right? And it can drop some white dragon scale, and you can craft something way faster you should and so on, right? That is a good stuff of being able to beat this too high level, too high strong stuff, right? In huge amount of role-playing games, right? That has this kind of game mechanic, which is very common, right? And in Pokemon, then, you can't capture them. That is just blatantly retarded. Because it's going to be hard capturing a too high level Pokemon that you meet at random that makes the world feel more alive. Again, right? It's going to be harder to capture them because it probably will defeat you instead. So if you manage to capture them, that should be a great reward, a great feat that, wow, I jumped in level there by capturing this thing. And then, of course, they won't listen to you anyway if they're following the classic rules of, if you have to have the badge to, or as they won't follow you, right? Your commands. So there still wouldn't be like a level jump in progression of the game, because you would you would manage to get it and then be too strong, because they wouldn't follow your orders anyway, so you couldn't use it. But if you say capture it and have it for later, right? So it will still be a good feeling of, wow, I got this unique Pokemon, or rare, I guess. Well, maybe unique, and so on, right? Like a legendary Pokemon, yeah. And there'll be an awesome feel to it. Instead, they locked it away. That's really stupid. That's just bad game design. That's bad game design. So I think everyone failed, and also I don't think the Dynamax thing is. I think it's not as bad as people are saying, in my opinion, but it also is not as good as Mega Evolution, in my opinion. Because Mega Evolution was more cooler, interesting. They gave them new forms, and not having that and having this stuff, it means it should both be in the game. Right? Why is the other game? Why is that gone right? It's stupid. So and so on. So like those few things, I think that also is a bad game design decision. So I mean, I really feel, right, from a professional standpoint, that everything in the game is failure, right? Everything in the game is a failure. It's like the design of the game, failure. It's a failure. Yeah, that's also a failure. It's not the worst failure. I think the design is not up to par, but it's like, I mean, I do like it that they are like, oh, this Pokemon is the new combination of this thing. But at the same time, though, if I worked in that company, is it that hard to be creative and say, oh, we never done, say, poison electric before. Let's do that one. Here's an idea for that one. It's not that hard to invent that. I mean, it's not that creative, in my opinion, honestly. I mean, it's like an obvious creativity, an obvious demand. Right? We should have that. We should have the new combinations as well. But I still think they made the new Pokemons and those stuff pretty well. So I'm not saying, I don't think it's bad. I'm just saying, like, it's not like, the greatest achievement ever either. It's just pretty okay, right? It's kind of what I expect, right? So, and again, I iterate, if the game you had all the Pokemons and you had a lot more game modes, right? Just same game modes, a lot more, a lot more ending game stuff and so on, right? The game would be pretty fine, and I wouldn't do this video when I wouldn't complain about it too much. Because the national deck stuff to me is obviously it's clear it's a lie, and it's clearly probably because it failed doing the model, the soul and so on. But I think that it's much bigger, right? That the gameplay is lacking because the new Pokemon aren't bad, but they are in a much emptier world, right? Again, right? The new Pokemon aren't bad at all, but they're in a world where it's less stuff to do with them than you could do in the previous installments. Not the first installment, but the previous 2 or 3 games before this had more stuff to do with the new Pokemons, and that is gone, right? And that is gone. So I think that is really disappointing. And again, then also that the world, I said it 3 times, I know, but the world you're moving around with the new Pokemons is much emptier. Not just the open world, but also kind of these empty cities, it's empty stuff and so on. So it's really lacking, and I think the biggest disappointment, right, of the year, of this whole decade on the game, because again, I mean, my brother, he keeps telling me he wants the Breath of Wild Pokemon, right? When you run around and it's live, it's action instead of turn and so on. He wants that, and I say that would be a great game too. Probably not for the main series, but like a good spin-off, right? That'd be cool too. But I think that some people want that thing, right? Instead, I can understand why. Absolutely, it would be amazing, right? I can understand why, but I just want them to be for this main franchise, for the main series, to repeat again, to be more of everything, right? And the biggest problem that I think that everyone has, in general, honestly, right, is that it just feels like it could be so much more, right? It's like, I'm enjoying the game. I think if you buy the game, you're gonna enjoy it. I don't think it's worth the full price. I'm mentioning it again. I hope for a Black Friday deal, because I think it's like half price is pretty. It's fair, yeah. But again, I think the biggest thing for me, honestly, is the principle of not buying the new Switch, not buying the Switch Lite Pokemon thing and so on, because they're not worth your full price of that. Absolutely not. Nintendo is still the biggest guys behind this Game Freak, right? And the Pokemon and so on. They're all together on this stuff, right? So Nintendo themselves doesn't deserve your full money. So I think especially there is where I hope people will boycott it. Even if they don't want to boycott the game completely, I think you should not pay the full Switch price of it also, right? So try to, if you are, I think people are in different camps, right? So if you're in a camp that, I don't want to, if you're in that camp that is like, yes, I want to punish Nintendo, but I also don't want to punish myself, because I know I'm going to enjoy the game anyway. If you're in that camp, which I personally is kind of in, where I'm like, things that I get a lot of games free and so on. Yeah, like I get most EA games free, I get Blizzard games free and so on. So I get a lot of games for free because I know people that are working everywhere. So they're sending me copies, they're sending me alpha and beta stuff and so on, stuff like that. But whatever, right? But if you're not in that, if you're like, but I wouldn't pay the full price, right? I wouldn't pay the full price at all. And especially again, then it's like, yeah, it's enjoyable, but it's like, you know, you can still be critical of the game, right? Critique the game and still enjoy it somewhat, right? And it's clearly still an enjoyable experience playing the game, but just like it's just, you know, there is so much faults in the teleporting and the graphics and so on. It's so much bad. It's just, but you can still enjoy it. And if you're in that camp, because I think it's interesting, you get to an interesting, like, how I say it, philosophical standpoint, where it's like, I want to punish Nintendo and Game Freak and so on, but by doing that, I'm also punishing myself, because the game is still playable, right? Let's get it right here. The game is absolute disappointment by enormous standards, enormous disappointing in so many regards, but the game is still playable. So if you buy the game, you're still gonna enjoy it, right? It's not the worst game ever. You can still play it. But I still think this title here, that the most disappointing game in the decade, is a worthy title, because you expect so much more quality from Nintendo. Right? You expect so much more quality. Like again, Luigi's Mansion 3. It's a great game, right? And it's especially on the polished level, it's a very good game. And why can't, you know, you expect Nintendo to be so much better than this. And they also been failing with the mobile games, you know, recently. But I expect it to be so much better than the other game companies, especially. Honestly, in my opinion, I'm biased though, but I expect Japanese companies in general to be better when it comes to like quality and so on, right? Just general and gameplay before graphics for Nintendo is particularly, but generally, yeah, the quality of bugs and so on, right? Because the game is still running on bad frame rate. The previous game was very laggy when you were doing the dual battles, so when you're doing 2 against 2 and so on. It was very, very laggy, horrible laggy, and you expect this new game to on the Switch to technically be better, right? But it isn't. It has the same issue. It's still the same bad frame rate and so on. I haven't got into that too much in the video, but yeah, it's still pretty bad. Like, it still is kind of laggy and so on as well, right? So it's like, man, you couldn't even fix that on Switch. It's ridiculous. It should flow so much better, right? So all of that being said, I think that I hope people, because I understand the whole philosophical standpoint of I don't want to punish myself too much because I do enjoy the game, right? People are gonna say that, right? And they probably will buy it anyway. So I hope you're gonna buy it at least when it's on sale, right? Don't give them the full price. And I think especially again then, in my opinion, you can punish them more like a hat red hit by buying the Switch. And also you can buy it, of course, used and so on. Yeah, you can buy the Switch and so on. You can get in that way, and that will decrease Nintendo's revenue in general because there's a bigger hit there, right, on the console. Because again, at least for my life outside this thing, I know a lot of people, and me also, right, they want to buy the Switch, want to buy the Lite and so on for Pokemon, right? I know a lot of people has done that, and I know a lot of people has cancelled the pre-order of the Lite or of the game of the Lite and so on. I know a lot of people have done, you know, in that camp, right? A lot of them. And I think especially then because of Black Friday, which feels like it shouldn't matter, but it does in this situation because, yes, Black Friday is a huge deal usually, 2 weeks from now, exactly after the game is released. I think it's very fair to say that. I think you should wait for the game, you should look at the reviews, look at the user reviews much more than the game reviews. Right? Of course, it's going to be a lot of 0, 10, you know, 0 review bombs because of the haircut immediately. But look at those reviews more, and then hopefully you can get the game and Switch and so on again. But I think that's like a lot of camp. For example, I didn't actually own a 3DS until Pokemon was released for it. I didn't. I bought it for Pokemon, right? And I think a lot of people, as myself, then want to buy the Switch or the Lite for Pokemon, right? So it's kind of the combined cost there, right? The combined effort of buying. I think a lot of people buying the Lite, especially the Lite now for Pokemon, right? And it's really like Nintendo isn't worth it. They can't have the biggest game franchise ever, or ever franchise ever, and still make a very pretty piss poor, you know, new version of it, and also sell their own game console for it. It's just not really working. It shouldn't be working. So I think, especially in my opinion, you should hurt them in not buying the Lite and so on. Switch Lite. I think that's the most fair actually. way to do it, and then you try to either buy a used version, right, or you buy it on sale. Hopefully, then now because it's very close to a big sale. But generally, it's weird, and I think that's also kind of the sentimental, emotional issue you have with this game, right? Generally, because it's like, yeah, the game is pretty. I said that's for but the game is pretty good. It's pretty enjoyable, but you play in the game and you're like, it just could have been better. I think for me, I know I mentioned like 10 times now, I think especially for me, the empty worlds is the most obvious thing, that you are running around there and it's like, this is a pretty bad open world game. It's bad, I mean, it's like close open world, yeah. And it's just like, I know I said it like 3-4 times already, right? But I think it's very comparable to F15, where everything's empty, where F7, everything was loaded with stuff and so on, yeah. So it's not like that. It's a very empty world, and you feel like this could have been so much better. I think that's the biggest concern with the game when you play in the game and experiencing this lacking gameplay, right? Because you really feel that this is pretty fun. It's pretty fun, but it could have been better in every regard. It could have been bigger, grander, more items, more this, more the dungeons, right, and so on. More stuff happening, more random events, more legendaries coming down from nowhere, and so on. It could be so much more of everything. So it's very clear that I'm having fun, but it's not fun, you know. It's not 10 out of 10 fun, it's like 8 out of 10 fun at best. I think that's the sad thing, right? Because you play the game and you constantly are reminded of, it's like, so you have this kind of sad feeling, honestly. This I have, but that could be because I work with it so much and I know how they're doing it and so on, and I can see all the issues in the game. The technical issues, the code is bad, it's running bad, right? It's laggy and all that stuff too. Haven't even gone into that, but it's clearly very, very badly optimized code, right? The teleporting in your training and so on. All this is happening too. I haven't even talked about that, but I think it's very blatantly obvious that the technical side of the game is bad. Like, it's really bad. It's not a Switch game. It's not a AAA game, right? It's very, very lackluster. Well, you can always say, oh, it's the same thing. Yeah, I mean, fine. But, you know, I'm talking about, like, polished AAA games, especially, again, from Nintendo, that's very, you know, very, very famous for developing maybe not the highest end AAA games on their console. It has less of a, you know, performance than PS and Xbox One, but instead they're very, very well polished, right? Perfect polished, and they're pushing their cost to the limit. This game is doing the absolute bare minimum to not push the cost at all, right? And is trying to be a 3DS game instead, more or less, or almost worse than that. So I think that's the worst thing, and why it's, again, the most disappointing game this decade. Because you're playing the game, and in every damn situation you're thinking that this could have been better. Yeah, you're always like, man, this could have been better. You enter this empty warehouse, empty factory, whatever you call it, right? And it's just empty, and you feel like, why is nothing here for? Where's all the stuff, right? Where's the random encounter? Where's this thing? Where's the event? Where's the comedy? Where's the joke? Where's the Team Rocket? Whatever, yeah. Like, where's that happening? Team Amazon, yeah. And all of that is so clear. So you constantly play the game, and even though you're enjoying it, at least I am enjoying it, right? But also, I am also like constantly disappointed. But again, it could be because I can see all the glaring issues. But I think that also, as I mentioned earlier, the reviews are crap, right? And the reviews are mostly ridiculously biased, because, like, Jesus Christ, how can't you not see these objective issues, right? Because it's one thing that you can. Oh, I hate the thing, honestly. I hate the thing that people saying that, well, you can't say that someone's review is wrong because it's like their opinion. It's like, no, it isn't. If you do a proper review of anything, you can be objective, right? You can say that this game here has worse graphics than this game, objectively speaking. They can always be said, right? Let's say this is a good example. Good example here. FF8 with traffic was okay, perfect. Chrono Cross. I mean, these graphics are pretty good, but it was new. It was pretty good. You know, it's 3D and it's pretty clunky and so on. But then FF8, I think, yeah, that is FF8. This game here looks better like Chrono Cross. Generally, the cutscenes and so on, right? The cutscenes especially, it's just better. Like, that's an objective statement. If you compare the cutscene with these two games, and also the general, you know, world and so on. But if you compare the cutscene particularly, the Final Fantasy cutscenes are vastly better, right? They look way better. There are more animation, more polygon, more frame, whatever. They're clearly better from like a technical, graphical standpoint. They're objectively, factually better done. then you could argue and say, well, but the Chrono Cross storyline is better, and the actual cutscene has more emotion, has more this and so on. And that's a fair point. You could argue and say that it's better as a total value though, because the writing is better, the narration is better, and so on. And I actually don't think so. Arguably, but yeah, I want to go into that. But you know what my point is, right? You could argue from that standpoint, and then it's like, yeah, it's hard saying this view is wrong, because if that person always thinks there's a better storyline, it's hard to say you're wrong about that. But you can always objectively say, the graphical value of it is worse or better, because that's a factual thing, right? And I hate the people when I try to defend Pokemon saying that, oh, you can't say that because it's not. It's like a fact. It's not a, it's an emotional. No, it's not. You can easily say this thing, right? And again, that's probably why I keep saying that too, right? That the game looks disappointing in every regard. Empty world, nothing there, no game boss, no end game, and so on. And because all of those things are objective standpoints that are lacking, right? No GTS, I said it for a while now, but yeah, no trading and so on, or not the level trading. That's a technical thing, right? There's a game stuff, a game utility on the side, right? That's gone now. That's factually worse. To my opinion, that's just factually lacking game systems. It means it's worse. That is my opinion how bad it is, right? That's my opinion. If I review the game and say that X is now missing, how much I value X is my opinion. But X is missing, right? And if you read these reviews, I know I'm all over the place now, it's a long video now, but if you read these reviews, right, and they're defending or not even mentioning, oh, it's not this, no this, that's why it's so silly, right? Because I think that's also being very silly, because we all know that the game is very disappointing because they're lacking so much objective truths, so much objective stuff that we know is bad now because it's lacking and they are missing and so on, right? And that's not an emotional standpoint, not a perspective standpoint, it's a factually standpoint, because they are missing, they are less of these things. And I think that's a reason too, right? Why these reviews, they're very, very fanatic defending it, probably bought, and also probably very emotionally into it, are not even mentioning this stuff, like the cat of the decks and so on, mostly, right? Because these are actually all objective standpoints, factual standpoints that the game is lacking. And because of that, they can't really argue for it, right? They can't even themselves can't argue, say, oh, but I don't need GTS anyway, because what can they say, right? They can only argue for how it's not very bad, right? They can only say that, yes, X is now lacking, but I did like X anyway. That's the only thing they can argue for, right? They can't say that it's better now, X is lacking. They can only try to, damage control how important X is, right? And I'm not saying that X is the most important thing ever, right? I'm not. The problem is that it's missing X, Y, Z, it's missing all these different things, right? And that makes it, on an objective standpoint, a very, very lacking game, right? And when you play the game, then that feels all the time. It's like, man, everything in the game should have been more grander and prettier, but also there's more stuff to do, right? And in game aims, yeah. So it is incredibly disappointing. It is insane disappointing game. It truly is, and I haven't been disappointed this decade. I truly haven't. I can't even remember another game, because it's like, from the standpoint that is that this is the Switch game, there should have been more of everything, because it's the first time you're doing it for a console, not a handheld, even though it's like, half console, but you know what I mean, right? It's clearly much more power for you, and instead you're removing everything. It's just objectively bad that you have cut away so much stuff when going to a better platform. But I honestly, as I mentioned earlier, I think it is a complete shit show, probably at the company, right? I think they had to just wrap something up very, very quickly. I don't think they planned out to cut away stuff. They probably just had to do it. That's why they would move and so on. That's why there's no end game stuff, because they were like, oh shit, we can't do this stuff. We have to use, because I mean, you would add the end game stuff last, probably, right? If you work on this game, the end game stuff is what you would add the last, more or less, right? Because you would do the storyline and you would the Pokemon one, and adding like a battle tower that has a little more functionality, or more beauty content stuff, or more stuff like that. All that is like extra game modes. You would definitely do that last. That would be like your stretch goals, right, of the production. Extremely likely, at least. I think that's very clear. I mean, again, I haven't worked here, But I think that's how you would do it in any other game, so I don't see why it would be different in this game, right? So it makes sense to me that they would do it like that for obvious reasons. Yeah, so that's probably why, honestly, why there is no endgame. Right? I mentioned the setup, but yeah, they just probably couldn't do it because they were like, oh shit, we are so after, we're behind. We have to release it at this date. It's always on the same date, right? In November. We have to do it then, and they're like, oh, there's no way we can add this and this and this and this stuff. There's just no way because we can't even make the actual core gameplay work very well. So we have to just cut away all the end game stuff. Right? So the game clearly should have been delayed. They clearly should have said, oh, we have completely failed. We have lost half the Pokemons. The code is bad. It's laggy. It's still bad ratio. It's still bad fidelity. Everything is low. We should really delay this thing to fix that. Yeah, I mean the core gameplay is not up to par with the Switch game. Right? It really absolutely isn't. And of course, that didn't work very well. Then you can't just add all the extra stuff as well, right? Because they probably doing their best to fix the mess and not getting it. I think it's pretty obvious, right? And then you get a very disappointing game, right? But it's very, very disappointing, and I think it's clear that the game production probably had a lot of issues and so on. But that's another story, right? They don't know that, but I think it's fair to assume. But in the end, I think this game is truly the most disappointing game in a very long time, and I'm trying now to figure out some other game that disappointed me, but it really isn't. For example, like I love Nier Automata, but I was disappointed that you could die in cutscenes. It played on perfect hard, you could die in cutscenes. That was disappointing. Like I was like, that made me angry, for example, right? But I wasn't like disappointed in a general sense. Pokemon, I really feel like everything in Pokemon is just worse than what it should be, right? I said it so many times now, but yeah, it's just worse. In every regard, it's something stuff lacking. It's lacking stuff in every sense of every gameplay. Of everything, it should be more of everything, especially as a Switch new game, right? But even if it was just another 3DS game, it would feel like, why did you remove half the stuff you had in the previous game? Yeah. So I think I can have a game. Do you know a game? But yeah, that's it. It's a long video. I wanted to be fair. I wanted to cover some, development standpoint. And honestly, I feel that'd be nice. That's probably the worst thing, because I was a nice person. But no, but I feel that'd be nice. I think I worked on a lot of games that have failed. I don't say failed, but I worked on a few, issues, right? And so I think when I read the little thing they're saying and so on, it's probably very well known. And the reason why they're quiet is probably because they know they've done a big mistake. They know that they failed a lot. And I mean, I am obviously in my head canon here, I'm arguing that they didn't at all plan to cut Pokemon, right? They just had to do it before E3. They were like, oh shit, it's not working and stuff. We have to just cut it away. Yeah, that I think is incredibly likely. It's extremely likely. And after that, then they have been in damage control at the company, and they're trying to I don't know. They're trying to just be silent about it. It's interesting too that in Japan, and yeah, I know a lot of people living in Japan and so on. I live in myself and so on, and there's a lot of people there. In Japan, they just kind of were quiet about it even. Yeah, they didn't even mention it. They were kind of like trying to hide all the facts, right, and so on. So they know that they're wrong, right? They know that they're doing wrong stuff, and the worst thing with this whole thing is probably that even if they done all these bad mistakes, from many standpoints, the game is clearly gonna sell insanely anyway, right? I mean, I haven't bought it, and I only buy the other version that I need. I will buy it if it's really cheap on Black Friday, otherwise I won't buy it. And I haven't bought the Switch stuff either, right? For the same reason. I was thinking of doing it, but now I went back here. And I was even I was thinking to buy like a new Pokemon Switch bag with the starter Pokemon. So I was like, no, I won't do it. But I will do it. I will admit that I probably will do it if I get like a really good deal on Black Friday. There was someone it's like, if you buy the Switch and this, you get the bag, you get this thing, and it's all really cheap. Then I will buy it, I suppose. Then I will buy the whole kit, right? I buy the new Switch and so on. Then I will do that probably, but maybe not even then. And yeah, it's a good deal, yeah. And it feels a little futile too, though, right? That's a little sad, I feel, with the whole thing, because I hope to God that they learn from this thing, the shitstorm they're having over it, and it's gonna be worse when the game is out. They're clearly gonna be review bombed and so on. tomorrow or yesterday. Tomorrow, when it's out, it's going to be the start of the review bomb. And it's clearly going to be worse and worse looking for them, right? And I really hope they learn something. But at the same time, this game will clearly sell millions. Where I live, it is all over the place. I live in a big city, and it's just there's so much commercial about this game. It's clearly gonna sell million of copies, even if everyone in hates it. It's gonna sell so much copies anyway. So who knows? Maybe they're gonna learn right, and then they make it worse, because that's kind of like they see that they can sell it anyway. It's kind of like they're too big for their own good, right? Like even if they fail, they still make money. And then they maybe learn from the mistake. Or maybe they'll be like, wait, if we can fail and still make money, so we can fail even more. Right? They also might be like, we can probably fail again because people are buying it anyway. So that's what I'm afraid of, right? That they're gonna see that they can fail miserably and still make so much money. So they can be like, why should we care? We can make another bad game and people will still buy it, right? So I really hope people, and I say again here, I think you should take it to Nintendo too, right? Don't buy the Lite, don't buy the new Switch stuff, don't buy the bigger Switch. Try to punish Nintendo too, right? But I will say an argue board, because I'm trying to be human here. I'm kind of the guy usually in the middle of stuff and trying to argue for both sides. So I'm a very diplomatic person, I would say. So I will think it's fair though, because Switch is always very expensive, they never go down in price. So I wouldn't blame anyone from buying the new Switch at, again, then the big sales, right? Because then it's finally going to the price, and you're all human in the end, right? So I understand people don't want to boycott it. And again, the game is not the worst thing ever. It's enjoyable, but it's also clear that 9.3 or 9 something, it's like a 7 or 6, right? It's just enjoyable and everything, but also has like a only missing feeling of this should be better in every regard. But in the end, it's kind of like, I hope to God that people are canceling the Switch stuff, canceling the pre-order stuff, canceling the Pokemon game, and then maybe buying it. And I talked about it like my brother yesterday. He's like, everyone should buy it used, right? Try to limit the money they're getting. That's a good idea too, and so on. But anyway, I was too much of that. I'm just saying, it's like, yeah, it's my last point. I feel it's a sad point, right? That I feel that even if you and I and whatever do all this stuff, the company probably will make so much money anyway, that in the end it's kind of like, oh, the environment, yes, you can care about the environment, but in the end it's probably gonna die anyway. Yeah, in the end, whatever you as a person do, if you don't invent new stuff, if you just like don't, throw stuff in the environment, in the forest, you're just doing a better job of that stuff, it probably doesn't matter at all. Like it won't matter. It's the only way you can save the environment is like by doing, inventing new stuff. In that argument, I suppose the only way that you can stop Pokemon from being crappy, bad, is inventing a game that steals their customers. That's probably the best solution, right? You have to hit them where it hurts by taking their stuff from them, right? That's the best solution for it. So in that sense, though, it's also very disappointing because it gives me that futility of mankind, right? It's like whatever what I do as a person doesn't really matter because they probably make so much money anyway that even if you boycott it, even if you don't buy it and so on, it doesn't matter. Not unless everyone else does it too, right? And with this game being so incredibly big and aiming at small kids mainly, right, that are still gonna buy it, it's unfortunately very futile. So I leave it at that. Yeah, it's very sad, but also that an argument why this game is so disappointing, right? It's very disappointing because the whole game is sad, and also gives you a sad realization of the world is crap, right? And I mean, a lot of people have said that this game like broke their childhood, like the innocence, because they've been, disbelieving left and right growing up. Stuff is worse and worse, but Nintendo and Pokemon have still been pretty good, especially Nintendo in general pretty good. And then this kicks out and it breaks the last innocence. And I actually bought it a bit. It's like, yeah, it's true, because Nintendo is always like, quality over money and so on. And, don't rush it. It's all the Nintendo thing. But then it's like, no, they're also failing now. So that's sad. But I also think that people are feeling this sadness again, right? Because it's like, I think people are also realizing that even if I will personally now refuse to, pay for the game I want to play, even if I don't want, people will think of that, and then they realize that even if I do that, it doesn't matter, right? So it reminds me of this environment depression people have, where it's like, oh, the world is gonna go down, and whatever I do, it doesn't matter because I can't change the world anyway. Like, even if I stop doing this Y and X and Z and so on for the environment, it doesn't matter because I am not even 1% of the whole thing, right? So, yeah, it doesn't matter. That's the worst thing. And it leaves you with this amazing sadness and an amazing disappointment, right? And it makes you really sad. Just generally, depression is coming forward, right? From Nintendo here. Because they will surely make a lot of money anyway. Even whatever we say here, whatever I say, whatever you say, it's gonna make a lot of money, right? And that's pretty sad actually in a way. So alright, I'll leave you after that. Depression, last point here. The world is futile. Whatever you do, you'll die anyway. Yeah, that's the world.